fierce winds and torrential rain have wreaked havoc across Victoria, from Melbourne to the Macedon Ranges and Kyneton to the Dandenong Ranges. But the deluge is fueling floodwaters in Gippsland, where a man has died in his submerged car. Nicole joins me now from Traralgon, one of the worst affected towns. Nicole, what more can you tell us about that tragedy?
Thanks, Tam. So what we know at the moment was the body of a man was found at Woodside, southeast of here, about 1:45 this afternoon. We're told it was community members who alerted the emergency services to the half-submerged car in floodwaters. We're told what really rang alarm bells for them was a dog sitting on top of the car, which kind of suggested that the car may not be empty. When police arrived, they say they discovered the body of a man, possibly aged in his 60s, inside. This really highlights just how dangerous these floodwaters can be. Around here today, helicopters were used to rescue about a dozen people from their cars after they drove into floodwaters. But here is the SES chief speaking on that earlier.
We can't emphasise enough that people need to exercise common sense and stay away from floodwaters and be alert to their conditions.
And Traralgon residents were told to evacuate earlier today. How are things looking there now?
That's right. So since we've been here, there have been dozens of people coming down just to check out how high the flood level is here, right near the centre of Traralgon. But there'll be hundreds of people tonight spending the night away from their homes, and it'll be a long and stressful night because at the moment many just don't know how much damage has happened at their properties. 200 homes were evacuated. We're told that for many, the severity of the flood came as a surprise. But even in the last hours, it does seem like the flood level is starting to drop. But here is Jetta Costa to take us through how the day unfolded.
Residents of Traralgon awoke this morning to find their town cut in half and water flowing rapidly through their streets.
We've been in our place now about 30 years and we've never had this rain and the wind that came from all directions.
I don't think we were expecting it to actually get this high this fast.
More than 260 millimetres of rain was dumped in the Strzelecki Ranges to the north, and that water rushed into Traralgon Creek. By 9 o'clock, the floodwaters peaked, taking over streets, parks and the local football ground.
We've just been down to inspect the Bridge Club, which is at the showground, so we've just seen that that's all flooded.
By lunchtime, evacuation orders were in place for large areas of the town, with shops and businesses in the CBD inundated.
A lot of places out of power, a lot of homes underwater, police boats going around down the streets. It's pretty crazy.
The region's roads flooded quickly, catching some drivers by surprise.
Yeah, we were woken up this morning with the ambulance chopper rescuing a person from a car stuck on the road.
Traralgon Creek is normally about a half a kilometre from Brian Ward's backyard, but when he woke up this morning, it was lapping at his doorstep.
I never expected so much water to come through our yard.
It's a similar story in rivers across Gippsland. It will be days before the water subsides and the extent of the damage is known. At Cower, farming contractor John Allen watched helplessly as his machinery was surrounded by water. He says the clean-up will take months.
I think our biggest problem at the moment is going to be the fences. You've probably seen behind us there, the fences are all disappeared.
Thousands of homes remain without power and Gippslanders are being urged to be careful.
If you don't need to be on the roads, if you don't need to be out and about, then please don't.
But as the clean-up begins, the Bureau has forecast persistent rain for the rest of the week. Jetta Costa, ABC News, Traralgon.
It was a frightening night on the outskirts of Melbourne too. Dozens of homes were damaged by fallen trees in the Yarra Valley and the Dandenong Ranges. The SES received more than 3,000 calls for help from that area, as Kristian Silva reports.
Brad Wind has lived in the Dandenong Ranges for 40 years, but he's never seen a storm like this.
Loud noise and, it absolutely wrecked the place.
He's one of 400 people who called the SES for help in Emerald alone.
I'm just waiting to get a decision to cut this thing down and put a tarp up over it.
In the morning, this is what greeted residents in Melbourne's outer east. Trees had crushed homes and knocked out power to several suburbs. In Olinda, police and paramedics dodged falling trees in the dark as they rescued an injured woman and her son.
You couldn't pick when and where they were going to come down. As we're walking up there, you could hear them crashing all around us.
We're very, aware of heat emergency and bushfire emergency, but these trees are killers.
There was a narrow escape for these women.
2 more trees came down as we were trying to get out of the house, so trapped us inside. There was trees everywhere. The SES weren't able to help because it wasn't even safe for them to be in here.
Across the state, there were more than 5,000 calls to the SES. The Bureau says there hasn't been weather like this in Victoria in 2 decades.
This had a nasty sting. It also had damaging to destructive winds that resulted in widespread vegetation damage.
Trees crashed through several houses in Lilydale, leaving a trail of destruction.
The whole roof's pretty much come off. There's water damage throughout the whole house.
The owners of this home jumped for their lives as a tree fell through their lounge room. But in a crisis, community spirit shone through as neighbours worked together to clear blocked streets.
Everyone's found their chainsaws and got stuck in, and it's been wonderful.
For residents in the worst hit areas, there's no guarantees that the power will be back on tonight. But the process of clearing damage from trees like this is going to take days. A brutal reminder that winter has begun. Kristian Silva, ABC News.
In the Macedon Ranges, wild weather and winds of more than 120 kilometres an hour have damaged hundreds of homes. Residents are now bracing for a long winter ahead, with tradies already in high demand thanks to the housing boom. Sarah Lawrence reports.
A car crushed by a falling tree and branches smashed through houses. Fortunately, no one was hurt, but it was a terrifying night for residents on the outskirts of Kyneton in the Macedon Ranges.
It's a real mess, and it's going to take a lot of cleaning up. A lot of cleaning up.
In the nearby Kyneton Bushland resort, manager John Nissen says between the damage bill and lost revenue, he's set to lose more than $200,000.
When that wind comes and you have the rain, ground loosens up, and extraordinary winds we had overnight.
Further into the township, a roof flew off an old building on High Street, landing just metres from a busy thoroughfare. Dozens of trees came down across suburban streets, all resulting in more than 300 calls for help to the SES. Resident Lee Matthews says she was kept awake all night as the wind tore up her pergola.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of sleep going on. I had kids in my bed and animals upset and meowing.
While in Woodend, Louise Farrelly's family is one of thousands of households without power.
No internet, no access to mobile phone, so we're kind of a bit cut off.
The clean-up in the Macedon Ranges is expected to take several weeks, and with more rain forecast in the coming days, it's likely to be a slow process. At least the wind is set to ease.
There'll still be a bit of a southerly breeze, but nowhere near the strength that we saw overnight with those howling southerly winds that kept a lot of people awake.
Another tough week for Victorian communities. Sarah Lawrence, ABC News.